Okay then, so we going to join the parts. Right, so as it stands, everything cleaned up, or just take that off. It's not going to help. As it stands, the joining edge ain't too bad. I've had them a lot worse than this. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay, so I mean, in an ideal world, what we've done is put a dial in two places to sort of aid alignment, but I chose not to do that with these parts, as I didn't really want it to restrict me being able to position it manually, because ABS distorts, and the problems I was having with the distortion and the warping with ABS. I chose not to do it, so it's worked out great considering. I haven't had any problems once I've joined them with the dials aligning. That's what we'll do. So the first thing we can notice is that we've got the parts touching. Let's have a look here. Okay, so the parts are touching here and here, and there's a gap in the middle. 9 times out of 10, it's this part that's slightly, ever so slightly out, and that's basically just against ABS and the nature of the beast. And what happens is this front edge here, because it's thin and comes up to a point, when it's printing, this front edge lifts ever so slightly, so it curls out as you're printing along. I haven't got like an active cooler on my printing head, which some printers, nearly all PLA based printers have, but ABS printers don't normally have them. But I have heard of guys using an active cooling fan to actually help with this kind of problem that you have. It's not great, it's not a huge problem, but like I say, if we put a straight ruler across there, we'll probably find it's touching there, and then slightly raised here, slightly raised there. And sometimes you get on this part as well, but I'll show you how I get rid of that. So next is on to one of my favourite tools, which is a sounding board. Okay, so if you guys haven't got one of these, yeah, go out in the garage, find an offcut of something flat, you know, and heavy and stable. And I've just got an offcut of MDF, and all I've done is glued 2 pieces of sandpaper on there. I think these are a grit 240 grit, so it's, you know, it's just a flat board. It's perfectly flat down the edges, and as flat as you're going to get for a piece of MDF. Okay, so it's a great tool, yeah. So you know, I've got several of these knocking around in the workshop and around the house where I'm printing and finishing prints. So very easy to set up. Like I say, just get some contact adhesive sprayed on the back of your tape, your sounding tape, lay it down, and away you go. No bubbles, lovely and flat. And all we're looking to do basically is, again, I just go around the whole part now, and I'll just give it a turn. So do the back first. What I'm trying to do is I want to get rid of any burrs that sometimes, I don't know whether they're called burrs or what would you call them in the 3D world, but sometimes when you're printing, if you're slightly over extruding your print, with your extruder and your plastic, what will happen is at points in the print, and it's normally on the corners I've found, so say we're starting here, okay, and we're extruding, so you're ever so slightly extruding, okay, so you got a build up of pressure slowly building up inside your head, and it's got nowhere to go, so it's building up. I think this is what's happening, and it gets to the corner, and it goes around the corner, and there's a slight sort of drop in pressure in the head, and it's able to like deposit a slightly more extrusion in the corner. So what you end up is like a little ridge on your corner, and obviously you want to get rid of that ridge. You can see it's more because of this ridge on here, so there'll be a slight ridge on there. It's ever so slight, but when I'm joining two things, I want them to be perfectly aligned and perfectly flat and perfectly flush in this plane. Yeah, that little ridge is all that's needed to create a whole lot of headaches later on when you're finishing. So I always start with the back and I was giving it a few, it's nice even pressure. Yeah, don't go too crazy. I've only got two shells on this, so I don't want to go too crazy with it. And you can see, it's great because when you sound it, you can see all the high points in your part. Yeah. So what you're looking forward to is just take off these ridges on the edges and do it as a flat piece, because when we join it, we want that to be perfectly flat. We don't want it to be even half a mil up on one side, because that will throw everything out. So that's probably good for that. And then I just go around all the sides again. So I quite like my moulds to look nice as well. So you might say you don't need to do the sides, but I like doing the sides. Sometimes it highlights other issues with your printing. This one you can see it's lifted where the print's lifted now, so it's stuck firmly on the build plate here and it's lifted, which you would expect with ABS when it's printing like that. It's not lifted a lot, it's probably about half a mil, across the length, which is not too bad, considering how much rafting I had on these. So again, do all the flat edges. Yeah. And it gives you another opportunity to inspect your part for cracks. Okay. So again. So when I'm sanding, I'm very conscious to keep it very flat onto the board. You don't want it rocking, so you don't want to sand your edges off. You want to keep your edges nice and sharp, yeah, so hold it very flat on the board, nice firm pressure, and that's all that's required. And you can see it gets most of the, we could really easily sand that down and get rid of all your layer ridges, but we don't need to. I don't want to take material off a part that I don't need to. On these edges, again, just go to the side of the board, the block, give it a couple of passes, and don't have to get too crazy. And a bit set on this piece. Okay, so the only one I haven't done is the joining, yeah, so I'm going to leave that until I've done the other part of it, because this is the one I really need to concentrate on. So again, I'm not going to do this one yet, I'm going to do the two together. So let's go around first to the back of it. Okay. You can normally feel when it's come off. A really handy thing to have is a brush with you, so you can brush, keep your part clean, so you can see where you're sanding. That looks pretty good. So I'm just going to do this edge here now. So much of this is done by actual feel as well, and you can actually hear as well when it's good to stop, because obviously when you start you hear a real raspy sound, and as it's smoothed out you hear a more constant of, I don't know how you describe it, like tone, so you can, if you listen to it, you can actually hear, you actually know when to stop just by listening to it. Here's another example of what I was saying about this sort of corner sort of bending and distorting. Again, it's ABS, it's just the nature of the beast really. Excuse me. So on this edge what's happened is it's exaggerated, it's bowed like this. Yeah. So when I'm sanding you can see the high points, high point here, high point there. So I'm not going to worry about it, and I don't want, like I said, I don't want to take too much material off it just for the sake of aesthetics. So that's the okay, so let's brush that off. All this dust as well that I'm brushing off, you know, you can keep it. It's actually really handy for your for the juice. You can use it in your build plate, or mix it with some acetone to fill some holes, or make a glue out of it just by adding acetone. Yeah, mixing it up with acetone. So you know, it's a really good filler. All this fine dust that you come off, and because you're sanding off a block, all you're doing is picking up the plastics, you know, picking up any other dirty bits of debris. So, so that's ready to go. Okay, this one's ready to go. Oops. And now we can start working on joining the two together. So the first thing I'm going to do is, let's see that. That's right. That's a better way of doing it. Okay, so when I'm offering the two pieces together, yeah, okay, I'm not paying too much attention to making sure this edge is flush or this edge is flush. Yeah, my important bits are the actual parts of the mould, and I'll use these points here for my registration before I'll use those points for registration to make sure the alignment is good. So, so that's basically where we want. Yeah, and at the moment I suppose we've got about, I don't know, probably looking at about half a mil gap. Okay. So what I'm going to do is give this a couple of runs on the block and sand it. Oops, let's get that a bit more in focus on the camera. So that's what we're starting with there. Yeah. What I'm expecting it is, you'll see a sanding mark here and a sanding mark here before you see anything happening there. So let's have a look. Again, because we're trying to hold this perfectly square onto the plate as we sand. Yeah. So we don't have to go crazy. It's easier to take more material off than to try to add material. Yeah, yeah, so you can see over here, you can see it's high, high, high. This is another high point, this is your low point in the middle. So just do a little bit more. Now just take your time with this bit, because if you get this bit right, it's going to save you a lot of time later on. And again, we'll do the same with this part. Okay, so we brush off our sanding board carefully. We have those two together now. You can see we're a lot closer to where we need to be. So we're down to, I don't know, we're pretty damn close now already. If I actually squeeze these two together, then you can see it will actually clamp the seam completely out. I don't particularly want to do that, because even squashing your ABS print that much, once it's glued, you're introducing, you know, forces into your print that may delaminate at a later date. So I'd sooner get this gap completely perfect, or as near as perfect, and not have to resort to pressing, to clamping it in. So I've clamped them in before and it's worked great, and like on the third cast, the part starts to split and crack. It's just because you're introducing all those extra forces that don't need to be there. So. so we've almost, you see we've almost got, we've almost sanded the whole surface now. Obviously on the corners is sanded almost, you've got almost no layers now, you can almost see no layers now. Up here we can still see where the layers are and the surfaces. And again over here almost no layers. Again, always offer it up to your part that you're joining before you go any further, because you don't want to remove any material you don't need to remove. You know, all I'm doing is holding it together and it's almost closed up completely. So I'm just going to do the other side of this. See over here you can actually see I haven't really sanded any of this part yet. When I'm sanding on the block, we're still catching the high points. So I'll give it some a bit more. That's another print finished. Okay, so you can see you've sanded, the sandpaper is actually getting to most of that surface now. There's a little bit of a low point there, but that's it now. I reckon it's going to be very, very close now. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty damn good. If you look at that now, once that's glued, that will fill. And again, this joint doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, because again, it's on the inside of the wing. You know, it's going to be inside the core of the wing, so no one's going to see it. But with all things, another opportunity to practice your technique, so I always try and get as good as I can. And I always do the easier bits first before I move on to the really important bits, which are the outside. Yeah, so you can perfect your skills before you get to the really important bits. So do the easy bits first. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll just move this out of the way. I'll just brush this off carefully. I'm coughing not because because of the dust. I'm coughing because I've got a cold at the moment. So all the kids have gone back to school and they're all sharing their germs and whatnot. So it's one of those things. Okay, so on the back of the board is where I normally do my joining, because it's smooth and level, and you know I'm not going to have any issues with bits laying up on it. And saying that, I have got bits of super glue that I've from the last time I joined, so I might need to sand those off. Just bear with me 5 minutes. Okay, wouldn't be a bad idea for me to actually wax up this board so I don't get that problem with the, that's just super glue that's just squeezed out when I've joined previous parts. Before we start gluing it, what I'd like to do is take some, I think this is probably about 800 grit sandpaper, so it's quite smooth, because I don't actually want to, what I want to do is just remove any burrs from the edges. Well, that's another point I need to do. I need to do the weld prep. Okay, I'll show that in a second. So, on this edge here, I don't want, I need to avoid rounding this edge, so I'm just very lightly gonna go both sides. I just want to get that edge as clean as I can, because it's going to help me when I've got the two pieces together. I'm doing this sort of thing on the edges, so I can feel lips and stuff. So we're taking care not to round this edge, because otherwise you're just going to have to end up filling it. do is I normally run my finger across the surface to feel if there's any obvious lips. On this one there is this seems to be this edge seems to be a little bit higher. So although it should match perfectly, sometimes, yeah, doesn't seem so bad on this corner, but it's definitely, you can definitely feel a bit of a lip right on this edge here. So what I'd normally do is, what I'll do is I'll probably put a piece of tape, just one bit of tape on this, just to lift this edge up, just the thickness of the tape. Okay. Alright, and then try again. I mean, obviously if you can avoid doing that, then do, because it should actually match perfectly. But you don't know how this is distorted during the printing. It actually looks like it's almost shifted a little bit, but you don't really know. You just got to work with what you got at the end of the day. Okay, still got a bit of a lip there. So I might need another little bit of tape on there. Because I'm not at all worried about how it looks on the back side, so I'm not at all worried if there's a step on this side. Yeah, it's a mould. The only thing I'm worried about is getting this, the actual mould face as perfect as we can get it. Oh, it's perfect now, okay. I'll even go as far as I need to lift this corner out as well. So I do that as well. You know, it's and you can go around in circles trying to figure out why it hasn't come out as it should have come out, but you know, that's not going to help you out. You need to work with what you got. Perfect. Okay, that's really good. That's really nice now. Okay, so that joint should join. The only last thing I want to do is, because the way my technique for actually joining these, there's quite a few ways you can do it for actually gluing it. It's my favourite bit is to CA it, so I'm just using standard CA, whatever you got knocking around. This is quite a thick one. I've got several, you know, each time I see CA I just pick it up, especially if it's a good price. It seems to be much the same. This is quite a thick one. This is very thin. You could almost just let this wick in, so clamp it up and let it wick in, but it wouldn't be, you know, I like to know that there's glue all the way through. So I like to use this thicker, slightly thicker CA. So what I'll do is we'll CA it together, okay, and once that's gone off, I won't use any kicker on it, so you just, you know, don't use any kicker, because kicker will slightly weaken the CA, the joint. So I'll CA it together, let it tack up and go off. We'll join the other part, and by the time we join the other part we can come back, and then what I do is I'll weld the back seam and onto here as well. I'll probably weld across the top. No, I won't actually, I'll leave the top seam. I might weld onto this, but to see how we go really. So it's CA'd, and then all this is going to be welded at the back and welded along here with the pen. But before you join it, much like welding with metals, like steel or aluminium, put a prep on. So all I'm doing is just chamfering the edge ever so slightly. Okay, so this is going to give me a little bit more surface area for the welding. It's almost like a wetted area for the weld to glue to, so you got more of a surface edge. Plus, when I sand this flush, we're still going to have some meat left in there. Okay, so I suppose that fillet's about, I don't know, it's about 45 degrees, and it's probably about 2 mil and a half really. Just breaking the edge really at the end of the day, yeah. Also, if your joint is super good, sometimes it's really hard to see where you're welding. So I like to prep it. I'll put a weld prep on that. You can do that with a deburring tool, but I don't feel it's as controllable as just using a file. so let's see what you get. This one's a tricky one to do because you. So basically, what we're going to end up with is there you go. You can see we've got a nice. Excuse me. Okay, we've got a really nice weld prep in there that we can fill, and it should fill almost flush. So when we sand it, you probably won't take much material off, but you've got a nice bit of meat for the plastics to melt and fuse together. Okay, the other thing you probably want to do is if the plastic's still shiny on the inside here. So when you've been sanding it on the sandpaper, it hasn't actually reached it and it's still shiny. I just normally just rough it up with some 240 paper. Just rough it up, just put some key in there, yeah, just to get keyed. Whether you need to or not, I really don't know. You probably don't need to. It just seems the right thing to do. I haven't done a huge amount of work with plastics, so yeah, so it's all nice and clean, no grease on there. We are ready to rock and roll. Okay, so next we'll get our super glue. CA, I think it's called in the States. And all I'm going to do is I want to try and keep the glue away from this edge because it always sticks to the bottom. And I'm not too worried if it bulges out the top. In fact, sometimes it's beneficial just for it to just kind of bead across there because you can sand it off and it automatically fills the gap. I haven't really got that technique absolutely sussed yet. I've tried different things, and I think on this one here I'm going to try and just leave that bead. So if there is a big bead on there, I might wipe some of it off, but if it's just a little bit, I'll leave it there dry, don't touch it, and then I'll just sand it off, and we'll see how it looks. Like I said before, you know, each time I join or finish a mould, I'm changing things up, just try and get things better. So we're going to bang this on here. Not going to worry too much about this bottom edge. Don't want too much glue going to the bottom. I'm going to get quite close to the top. Okay, so I'm just going to put it on the one surface. Make sure that's not going to black up. And then drop it down. Make sure our bolts clean so we ain't got nothing underneath there. And I'll just bring the two together and just rub them up and down. Yeah, so I'm just smudging and smearing that glue all over. Yeah. And what I'm happy to see is little beads of glue coming out the top. Okay, so make sure we've got nothing horrible on the bottom. Okay, so it's starting to go off now. And now, like I said, I'm not worried about lining up there, and I'm just lining it up on the important bits in the mould. So I'm just doing that by eye. That seems pretty good. That creaking in the background is the print just releasing off the glass build tray. Yeah, it used to freak me out. I was like, what the hell is that? Something on the print. It's just the print releasing from the glass build tray. So literally, I just hold it all together. Seems to be quite a big gap on this one for some reason. So I might actually wick some CA down there. There actually seems to be quite a big gap on that. And that wasn't there when we tried it. It's not a problem. Not a problem at all. So we'll deal with that later. Not a big problem. Especially as it's on the inside. Okay, so that's basically it. Yeah, so I'm not trying to just held it together so it goes off. I'm going to put it aside now and let it go off. Okay, I'm going to join the other part now. And then we'll weld up the two together then.